Welcome to Reddit After Hours. Today we're covering r/today I effed up, where OP accidentally tells a grieving father that his child is an effing moron. Our first Reddit post comes from Physical Device 1396, titled "Today I effed up by calling a family's recently deceased son an effing moron." For context, I'm a mailman who works out of the Midwest. I don't have to tell my fellow carriers in this area that the past 3 months have been really rough. Not only has my city had snow for 3 weeks straight now, but Christmas package volume hasn't gone down very much. I've been working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday for these last 3 months, just trying to keep up with the volume. It's also been very cold, and all around I've been extremely exhausted, stressed out, and tired. Unfortunately, yesterday was no different, as I was told first thing in the morning that I had 2 routes that I had to get done all on my own, plus any extra packages when I got back. Not only that, but my ProMaster, which is a bigger mail truck, had been taken on Sunday for maintenance, and I'd have to take a much smaller Metris car. This means I'll have much less space for all the mail and all the packages, but Metris cannot drive in any amount of snow either. And I'm not joking, even a light dusting on the road will result in you getting stuck. So I was already tired and very frustrated. Fast forward to halfway through my day, and I'm delivering packages to a nicer neighborhood. I see the house that I'm dropping a package at doesn't have any open spots to park on the street, except for in the front of their neighbor's fairly long driveway. It's not uncommon for us carriers to block a driveway for a minute just to drop off a package, so I didn't really think anything of it. Well, I couldn't see the end of the driveway due to the other cars, and as I turned to park, I realized that at the end of the driveway is a pretty large pile of snow. I tried to brake and turn, but unfortunately it was too late. I land right in the middle of the snow pile and get completely stuck. I try in vain to get myself out, but for safety reasons, we aren't allowed to dig ourselves out. So I have to call the office to get a tow truck, which I'm told may take an hour just to get there. This means I'll have to stay an extra hour to get the rest of the packages delivered. Pretty obviously, I'm absolutely livid at this point, cursing up a storm in my mail car. Then, down the driveway comes a man who doesn't look very happy. He throws up his arms in that "what the F are you doing" pose, which just makes me even more mad. I get out and I snap at him, saying, "Can I help you?" He snaps back at me with a "what are you doing blocking my driveway?" This is where I effed up. I'm usually very calm and polite with customers, no matter how rude they are to me. But today, I just couldn't control myself. And I say, well, it looks like someone was too lazy to shovel the snow on their driveway into their yard and instead pile it into the street. The man gets red in the face and looks like he's going to scream at me, but takes a deep breath and says, "My son shoveled this for me." Without even thinking about how to respond, I said, "Well, your son is an effing moron." I again expect him to yell back at me, which in hindsight is exactly what I wanted him to do. Instead, he stumbles back like I just struck him. I see tears start to pour from his eyes. He immediately turns and half runs up the driveway, and I can see that he's actually sobbing. I instantly feel confused and extremely guilty, because mailman or not, there was no reason for me to speak to him that way. So pretty quickly, I follow him up the driveway where I see the cars parked. On both back windshields is a sticker of a boy with a text on top that says, and I'm using a fake name here, "R.I.P. Riley, we'll miss you, 2008 to 2025. I feel like I was slapped in the face. Their child had passed away 2 weeks ago. I walk to their door in a daze and knock. Both parents answer with a mix of fury and anguish on their faces. That's when the stress and the exhaustion from the past 3 months and the intense guilt that I was feeling hit me like a brick wall. I dropped to my knees and I began to cry, trying to tell them how sorry I was in between sobs. To my astonishment, both parents dropped next to me, wrapped me in a hug, and started to cry with me. We stayed like that for a few minutes until I got my crying under control. I told them why I was so angry and how sorry I was. The dad put his hand on my shoulder and told me that he forgave me, which only brought more tears for me. We introduced ourselves and we talked for a bit, but eventually I had to go wait for my tow truck in my car. But as I was waiting, they both came out with winter gear and snow shovels. They were offering to dig me out, which I vehemently refused. I told them that I didn't at all deserve their help, but the mother told me I cleaned up my son's messes for 16 years because I'm his mother. That doesn't stop just because he passed away, which caused me to cry even more. They eventually got me out, and I exchanged phone numbers with them and told them I'd invite them over for dinner later this week. They accepted, and now my wife and I are going to cook them a veritable feast this coming Saturday. OP, I'm glad you were able to connect with them in the end, and maybe them connecting with you is somehow helping them deal with their grief a little bit. But, at the end of the day, I think this is why people say, especially at work, try to be professional and try not to blow up at people, because, you really never know what they're going through, and any jab you throw at them could be one that stings way more than you intended it to. So just try to be nice to everybody. I understand. I'm not trying to down you. I know work stress can, be hard sometimes, but, try to get that anger under control, OP. Our next Reddit post comes from Posting for Answers, titled, "Today I effed up by participating in a disappoint your parents party and actually disappointing my parents." For context, me and my group of friends like holding different themed get-togethers and parties with creative themes and incentives to dress up, like awarding gift cards and cash prizes to the best costume. Our last party was on New Year's Eve, and the theme was disappointing your parents. There was a lot of creativity that went into it, with people showing up pregnant, including men, with the love child of their maligned celebrities, inmates in orange jumpsuits, and sleazy drug dealers and pimps. The winner was a friend of mine who showed up as Alex Jones from InfoWars and left the party shirtless, popping horse dewormer and screaming obscenities about water turning frogs gay. I ended up showing up as a witch, partly because I already had the costume on hand, and honestly because I like dressing up as a witch. So I partied with the hat, the dress, and a straw broom, and it was fun until my parents found out what I was wearing. At first, I thought they were joking around, pretending to be disappointed because I had worn a witch costume a few times before when I was a teenager, mostly on Halloween, but I thought, oh good, it was a disappointment to your parents' party, and my mom and dad are actually disappointed. Mission accomplished. But then they started getting serious, saying that I was taking the costume, quote, too seriously as an adult since I had worn it more than once as a teenager, and they were legitimately worried that I was practicing witchcraft by wearing a costume. They even went as far as to suggest that the broom had a philiac symbolism to it to openly disclose my lust for men, which was honestly mortifying to think about. So anyway, there I was, telling my parents that it was just a costume party, but they decided that because I've dressed as a witch as an adult, that I'm somehow in league with Satan and in need of a baptism tanning bed with holy water, bath salts, or something of the nature. Since that time, they want to take, quote, precautionary measures by bringing me to church every weekend, humiliating me in front of the clergymen by telling them that I'm wearing a witch costume as an adult, dumping the costume in the rubbish, and even wanting to review my playlist on Spotify to see if there's any influences to witchcraft. Needless to say, I've set all my social media to private and scrubbed my parents' comments from any posts, and I refuse to answer my parents' calls until Discount Alex Jones surrenders his prize to me, since I've actually managed to disappoint my religious parents at the New Year's Eve Disappoint Your Parents party. OP, I honestly don't even really see what the problem is. You went to a costume party with a costume. Who cares if you went as that costume as a teenager? I went as Deadpool as a teenager, and in college, I just continued to love Deadpool and love the Deadpool movies. So in college, when I went to, one of the frat parties, I dressed as Deadpool. Not because I worshiped Marvel or I worshiped the devil or Deadpool. I just liked the character. So I don't know, OP, your parents seem really judgy for no reason. Our next Reddit post comes from King Mob is Invisible, titled, "Today I effed up by telling an old friend that I didn't see him at his own wife's funeral." So last week, I seriously effed up. I was at a hardware store looking for a part that I couldn't find. So I grabbed a random worker who was walking by to ask where it was. As soon as the guy stopped, I recognized him as someone from my high school friend group. He was never my best friend, but we hung out a lot with the group, and I actually liked him. I hadn't seen him for years at this point, not for any particular reason. Our lives just kind of went in different directions. So he shows us where the part is, and we start talking. How you been, etc. He asked me if I'm in touch with any of the other people that we used to hang out with. I tell him, honestly, not really, but once in a while. It's been 25 years since we graduated, so it's not really surprising. Here's where I effed up. I suddenly remember that I did see the whole group somewhere a few years back. So I say, oh yeah, I did see everybody at a funeral a few years ago. Were you there? I don't remember you being there. He kind of gets a quizzical look on his face and asks me if it was one friend's funeral, a guy who OD'd a while back, and I said, no, it wasn't his. I was out of the country for that one. His quizzical look quickly intensifies. Right at that second, it hit me. The funeral that I'm half remembering was for this guy's wife, who died 5 to 6 years ago of cancer. She was very young and left him with 2 young kids. It was honestly really sad. I went because my other friends were all in town and all going, and I wanted to show solidarity even if I hadn't been in touch with them in a while. Realizing this made my stomach drop and I just wanted to disappear. Since we weren't that close anyway and I hadn't seen him for a long time, I didn't want to just be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. That was your wife who died and I completely forgot about it. So I just kind of said, well, I'm sure I'll see you around, and I left. I felt so bad, but I judged that in the moment, perhaps wrongly, that feigning ignorance and looking like a complete butthole was better than opening an old wound at work for someone that I'd barely seen once since high school. I'm sorry, man, and if you're reading this, I do feel like a butthole. And then OP throws in a quick update. Yes, of course he was at his own wife's funeral. I just didn't remember whose funeral it was right away because I didn't remember talking to him like I did the rest of the group. That's because I had gone through the line and I had only interacted with him long enough to shake his hand and say something like, I'm sorry for your loss, I'm thinking about you guys, and letting him get on to his closer friends and family. Yeah, OP, I can definitely understand why you feel like a butthole. I mean, there was kind of no winning there, but in that situation, I probably would have just profusely apologized for forgetting and just try to avoid that grocery store like the plague in the future. Our next Reddit post comes from MTVAOT, titled, Today I effed up by saying YouTube tortillos over and over, causing me to lose a job at the literal last minute. Not today, but a little over a year ago, I had an interview with a company that I nailed. The whole time I was thinking, yes, girl, you got this, while nailing every single question. They told me during the interview how impressive my cover letter was, how they wanted me to come do a paid shift to see how the position fit me, and how they thought if the position didn't work out, they could look into another position at a new location that they were opening in 2024. I was ready to get up, give a stellar handshake, and wait for the call that I knew was coming. That is, until they gave me one final, quote, for fun question, which was, who would you put on your Mount Rushmore? I knew this question was coming, so I already thought about my answers. I gave my first 3 and bonded them with 3 male interviews on some of our people matching up. With a bolt of confidence, I added that my 4th and final choice was Paul Hollywood from the Great British Bake Off. To my surprise, no one knew who he was or had love for him like I did. Flabbergasted, I said that I had watched the show and his most recent cookbook. I went on to add that I had watched some of his YouTube tutorials, but that's not what came out of my mouth. YouTube tortillos is what came out. I was shocked, and I went on to correct myself, but I kept repeating YouTube tortillos. It started with just me calmly saying this phrase again, just to see if it was just a one-time mistake, apologizing once or twice for it. But it quickly turned into frustration. I began angrily repeating YouTube tortillos, YouTube tortillos, tortillos, YouTube tortillos, over and over and over again, getting more and more frustrated. feeling like at this point I must prove myself. After about 2 minutes, which felt like 20, the most intimidating of the 3 men interviewing me said, "YouTube tutorials," giving me an out. But I had too much pride. I tried saying it once or twice more, saying YouTube videos instead. The interview quickly ended and went from a "we'll schedule a time for you to come do a paid shadow shift" to radio silence. Who knows what could have been if I hadn't picked Paul Hollywood as my 4th person on my Mount Rushmore. OP, sometimes the stress gets to all of us. If I were them, I probably would have laughed it off and not really thought twice about it, but hey, it's a funny story for you nonetheless. I hope everything worked out with your job search otherwise. And actually, OP has a quick update. Within 2 months of fumbling this interview, I got a raise and a promotion at my current job. I figured the universe caused me to fail because it knew that this, quote, dream position was not what was best for me. Now I am making more than I would have at the other position with better hours. It goes to show you that sometimes your dreams aren't always what will make you happy. Good for you, OP. I'm glad that worked out. That was Reddit After Hours, bringing you r/today I effed up. Thank you all so much for listening, and if you like these videos, like and subscribe and leave a comment down below for future Reddit subs you'd like us to cover.